Gorgeous, baby. You're gorgeous.
This is the Josh Podcast Show, the anti-podcast podcast on God and man. The show that everybody's talking about. The show that will become a necessary part of your weekly mental diet. The show that picks up where JoshRolfe.com leaves off. The show title that uses the word podcast 4 times. Introducing your host, Josh Rolfe.
Woo! Yes! Here we are! Yay! One more episode. One last episode. You've seen the title. I just wanted to give it away now. This is the last show. I don't know if I'll call it the last show or the last episode. Last show sounds a lot more dramatic. I have with me the guest of the hour, the one who's been very supportive throughout this entire podcast. He's actually listened to an episode or two. When you were on the road today, I was asking you if you had spent your 3 hours on the roads listening to my podcast, and he said no. And then right as soon as he pulled in and I saw him, he said, "Oh, I'm listening to your show right now." So I think I made you feel guilty. I have with me the great, the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Tyler Oborn. How are you?
I'm doing well, Josh. Thanks for having me.
How many podcasts have you been on?
Been on or listened to?
Been on.
Oh, ever?
Yeah, this is
None.
it, right?
This is
your
the first time.
one.
It is.
Yes. So I love sharing this experience with other people. So you are one of the few, the brave, who's willing to do this. So I thank you for that.
Well, thanks for having me.
I've been excited to have Tyler on for a long time, and because we have a lot in common. We've done a lot in our educational and career journeys that is similar that we can talk about, and then also we have the same taste in music, which kind of came out later. This was like maybe a year or two ago,
right,
when we realized we had some common taste, which there's not a lot of people out there that are really hardcore into New Order.
Not that I've seen.
So New Order is one band but we haven't really talked about too many other bands, but we were basically into the same stuff growing up. And you were military?
I was. Yeah, my dad was military, and we were stationed both in the United States and overseas.
Cool. So, where overseas? What was the most exotic location?
Probably Japan.
Japan? Wow.
Yeah, we lived in Japan 86 to 89. 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And they're way into the new wave scene back then.
At the time, they were. That's where I discovered my my love and affinity for New Order and other bands like them.
So Depeche Mode?
Sure, Depeche Mode.
Erasure,
yep.
And this is sort of their peak, too. I mean, those bands, Substance from New Order came out in 87. Depeche Mode came out with Music for the Masses in like 87, I think. And then
I think Violator after that.
Violator in 90.
Right.
And Erasure, and then Pet Shop Boys were huge, and
way into the Pet Shop Boys.
Who else? OMD.
I think I saw them in concert once.
Did you?
In Salt Lake City, actually, of all places.
Wow.
In college. But yeah, it's the Smiths, Morrissey, when he went out on his own.
I saw him. I had a piece of his sweater. I had a piece of his. He was wearing like this. It looked like he was wearing aluminum foil. He's the Lady Gaga before there was Lady Gaga.
Right.
He wasn't he wasn't dressed in meat, because back then there wasn't a sanitary way to do that. But he was kind of a flamboyant, eccentric guy.
He was.
So did you ever see him?
I think I saw him at the Salt Palace, or no, where? Somewhere in Utah, right? He came to Utah in the late 90s.
Huh.
Saltaire.
Saltaire. Yeah.
I think I saw him there.
Cool. So you've seen a lot of shows.
Not as many as I would like to.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was interesting that you said that the height of that type of music was, for me, late 80s, early 90s, and then as soon as I got to my freshman year of college in 91, Pearl Jam was huge, and it was a totally different, you had Pearl Jam, and you had
it's like the grunting music.
The grunt music.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this?
Because there was nothing like that thick
Where's my synthesizer?
guitar. Yeah, it was all it had gone very synthesizer, and the only thing to compare it to, or to compare the four-piece band to, previously it was either punk rock on the one extreme or like Chicago, on the other.
Right.
So
yeah, so it's interesting the way kind of my discovery of that genre of music in Japan was, I can't remember who introduced me to it, but I think New Order was the first one. When I got that album, I was like, this is really fun. Like, I like the dance music, kind of beat to it. And in Japan, my family would travel to South Korea. We'd take these military hops twice a year. We'd go over to South Korea, and you could find pirated music everywhere. And so I was walking down the street, I'd see an album, I'd pick it up, I'd try it out, listen to it. It had a lot of tape cassettes back then. And we started to kind of see like who influenced who and who was played next to who, and that's kind of was my discovery. And so as I got more into certain types of music, you can begin to see what other bands were like them. So next time I was in Korea, I'd pick up another one and try that out, and some I liked and some I didn't. But really, that's how I kind of discovered on that. It was before the internet was out, so
yeah. No, back then, yeah, my ticket to music was like the obscure college area, like Villanova near Philadelphia. Had a record store that I forget the name of it, but man, I loved going there and you just browse through tapes. You either went to Sam Goody, the tape store, and then when CDs started getting bigger in like the early 90s, I'd say, then you'd come through the CDs, but you were really just looking for like the album label or the band, and you could always kind of tell, okay, this is sort of a more alternative,
right,
new wavy type band. And sometimes I'd get a tape that was, I remember one, they were called, what was their name? But a total disappointment. It turned out it was more like a wannabe boy band. They were more like New Kids on the Block than they were this like deep, like intense, darker music that I was kind of into. But
right. No, it was at that same time. I had friends that were into Whitesnake and Poison and that whole the hair band rock
hair bands.
And I just knew, like, I listened to it with them, and I thought, no, it's fun, but it's not me. I could tell pretty quickly. And it wasn't until later that you begin to see, it was probably 1989, 90. I'd stay up on Sunday night and watch MTV, and they had, what was that show, the alternative show?
120 Minutes.
120 Minutes.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's the other route of discovery was
I
MTV.
got a lot of music from that.
Exactly.
Yep. I didn't have cable, but a friend had cable, and she would record it, and then I'd watch it like that next week.
Yep.
And just fast forward through all the songs I wasn't crazy about, but I found some decent bands through that. What's crazy about music, I don't know if you have this thing about you too, but like I'll go, now I have Apple Music, so I just anything that pops in my head, I can search for it and play it, and I love it. Spotify's that way, and others. But there was a song I found recently that it's like as soon as it started, I could like play the whole thing in my head. It's like it all came back. I wish my memory was that good about other things in life, like, my job, Like, it would be really good if I was in a meeting and I could recall things, like I can recall that song I last heard 25 years ago.
Right. There's powerful memories association. I can remember...
Maybe that's what it
like
is.
you said, same thing. I remember, late at night, laying in bed, watching these, trying to stay awake, watching 120 Minutes, and I can remember vividly some of the videos I watched. I'm like, especially Depeche Mode, Personal Jesus, when that video came out, I was like, oh, it's great, and some of the other ones that came off that album. And then the first time I saw, I can't remember what it was, but I remember watching New Order's True Faith. I was like, what a brilliant video, because it was early on, before we had moved to Japan. We'd watch, as a kid, we'd watch MTV, but there's some really I don't know, some of the quality of the music videos were not that good.
Uh-huh.
And then so I guess that's where I got into some of the music then. But
good stuff. So I bring this up because you have tickets to see New Order on Friday, right?
Thursday night in New York City.
In New York. Very jealous.
You should be coming.
I had a sliver of a chance, but I chose my family instead because it would have meant being too long away. My wife actually gave me the green light to do it.
Wow.
So I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. Well, this is, for anyone wondering, I started out saying this is the last show, so I want to explain that, because when I first talked to Tyler about my podcast and said, I'd love to have you on sometime, and you're like, sure, but it'll be the last show you ever record. And so, because the show would just kind of fall into the dark abyss, right?
I would have known. That's the point where I would know you've hit rock bottom, and you're trying to bring on anyone that would fill some airtime.
So that's why this is the last show, and I thought the timing of it would be so perfect, having just finished off the last episode, which is called Politics, Gender, and Math, Part 1, and then to just add this week as the last show. I thought that would be really funny. And so next week will be Politics Part 2. But I said earlier, also introducing Tyler, that we have shared similar career paths, and that is in the political field. And I think you and I are one of the few who have studied political science in undergrad. Did you do a master's?
I did.
So we both studied political science in undergrad and actually pursued careers, which I remember at the time people saying, this is totally a joke degree. Even people who were like, what other major talks like that, Well,
maybe psychology and sociology.
Yeah, maybe so. So you've been in D.C., you now live in New Jersey, you do a lot of government affairs, government relations type work, and you also listened to part of my episode, and I was talking about Aristotle, and you brought up your philosopher of choice that kind of made an impression on you. And did you learn, or were you first introduced to him in undergrad?
Undergrad, right.
Okay, so maybe take it away from there, your thoughts.
Yeah,
what I finished with last week, and then thoughts about...
some of my favorite courses at BYU were in political philosophy. And so the whole idea of what's equal, equality, justice, rights, everyone always knows the example of your right to swing your fist ends at my face. You can't do whatever you want. So that's not the rights that we have. We can't do. There's limits to those rights. And then the theory of justice, which is good. So I mentioned earlier John Rawls to you, and the Rawlsian theory of justice, which I always found compelling.
This is a modern day philosopher. I think he wrote his book in the 70s, I want to say, or early 80s. But he's a more contemporary philosopher, kind of in the political theory realm. So, and modern political theorists are looking at these bigger questions of, what is justice? What are our rights? And they've been talking about these things. Philosophers have been talking about these things for
hundreds of years. I mean, if you go back to even before that, way back to Hobbes and talking about how do we organize society and why and what that looks like, and a lot of it comes down to maintaining some type of order amongst, like, a social contract, right? We have a social contract between each other of how we're going to act and engage in society so that it's fair and equal, but allows us enough freedom to pursue interest. And so looking at, the early philosophers that influenced the founding fathers, you go back to periods in England and Scotland and other places that had a similar experience of looking at these things and talking about these issues of what it is that man should have as rights, and the basic rights which allow them to pursue who they are as individuals, up to family units and society and how we all are organized. But back to Rawls and his theory of justice was, standing back and looking at the type of society that we would want to have if, knowing beforehand, we would set up this society not knowing where we would be, what type of position or status we would have in that society once we entered into it. So if you and I would go to start over, like if we were going to start society completely over again and move to an island, and before we got there, we would say, what are the type of, what's our social contract going to be like, not knowing where we're going to end up with, who's going to be, have the resources and the money and whatever else that makes it the most fair for us.
And we like to think we're not in a caste system like India, for example, where you're born into a certain class or caste, and you're stuck kind of in that for life. But we kind of are too, because you've said we don't know our condition, or our condition determines a lot of our value in society. And so creating a system wherein the weakest, from the weakest to the strongest, can all kind of coexist in this, just environment. That's...
Yeah, exactly. There's certain things that you look at as far as opportunities when it comes down to what is, equal opportunity, right? Equal opportunity to pursue. It's not the equality of the outcome, although a lot of people would like it to be. It's not even when you look at the equality that comes from equal opportunity to pursue something. You try to make it as equal as possible, but there's, I think, some natural advantages or disadvantages that each of us have. Like, we're not all tall, we're not all short, we're not all strong, and there's certain things that give one an advantage over another in some aspect, whatever it is. So you almost can argue that there's no equality of the starting line or the finish line, because there's just so many differences amongst everyone that you can't. How do you make up for that in society? You can't. But you try to make it as equal as possible for everyone to have some type of opportunity to succeed in some area where they find fulfillment.
So tying that to the Aristotle and politics and happiness, what would your solution be? Because you're obviously into politics, and last year for Americans and even the rest of the world that was watching had very strong feelings about the two candidates, and without getting into who you were for or against, like just thinking of your mental state, and do you consider the way you followed it healthy, or did you get worked up? And I guess I would just assume that you followed it in more of a healthy way.
Yes.
Knowing you through the election and the things we talked about. But do you have any thoughts? I'm sure you knew people who were, very kind of emotionally into it and just following friends on Facebook. Do you have any advice for how people should view things? And does the Rawls perspective, because I brought up Aristotle last week in that show about how Aristotle, his view of politics and how it can ultimately is kind of about the science of happiness, really. And I'm going to follow up with that a little more. Does Rawls help you kind of accept it or look at politics, political discourse in a different light? And do you have any thoughts for others who might be kind of too emotionally sucked into this, a way for them to look at it? That's kind of very heavy, putting you on the spot.
That's a very big question. I don't know if his theory specifically helped me through it, but I've always been fairly even-keeled when it comes to these type of things. I don't get that worked up about it, and I'm not sure if that's because when you've been in it enough, you kind of disengage from the emotional aspect of it.
I think that's probably a big part of it. That's probably a big part of it.
For me, I saw it as there's too many checks and balances, and it's too big of America is too big for one man to ruin. There's not in the power split between the states and the rights that the states have. There's just too much that I don't think one man could ever pull down on his own. And so I always worry when there's one party control of Washington. But having been through it with the Bush years, there was times, and then there was times before that where there was one party control, and things.
Obama too. There was 2 years where they were.
And the wheels didn't completely fall off during either of those times. And so if you have the perspective of history, you go back long enough, there's, I guess it's like looking at the stock market every day. If you look at the stock market every day, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. If you step back and look at 1 year, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, it's not so bumpy. And so for me, I look at politics that same way. Kind of a long view, knowing that I think our country and our system is bigger than one person to ever take down. And so for me, that was, I didn't get that worked up about it. And, personally, as I tell my wife, I'm like, look, there's only so much that we can control, but we can't be forced into believing or acting in a certain way. So no matter what is, I guess, legal or not legal, or the social norms of the day, like, as long as we have individual freedom, we can choose how to behave and organize our family and what we can teach our kids. So as long as we have those types of freedoms and rights that are preserved, then the rest of it almost, not that it doesn't matter, but I don't get worked up about it, because I can still choose to teach my kids, and my wife and I can organize ourselves in a way that we feel best fits our values, our morality, if you will.
Okay. Good. And then on the Rawls part, I want to go back to Rawls to find like a practical tie-in. Like, how does that matter today?
I think a little bit helps me when I teach morality to my kids, and when we look at morality in our like our local towns and how we teach our children how to treat other people, because you never know when you're going to be on the other side of that same treatment. So how you treat someone, not knowing where you'll be tomorrow or the next day, you want to be as fair and equals and good to other people as you can, because someone's going to be treating you similarly the next day or that same day. So the more that we teach those types of values of, let's be as fair and honest and I guess use a good sense of morality in our everyday lives, it will just make all of society around you that much better. So that's how I see it. Not that we could ever go back. Like I was thinking through this, if we could ever start again, right? If we, there's a lot of, you go back and look at the pilgrims that came here, and some of the early settlers who tried to set up their utopian vision of what society should be like, they always failed, right? And it was because of human frailties. There's something always crept in that, they tried to form their ideal perfect little society, but it never held up. So the theory is a little bit different than actually putting it into practice. And I don't know if, I love the theory, I just don't know how you could ever structure it in a way that would take out the human greed and the human frailties that we bring with it. So you can have a perfect theory, but our own trying to implement it with our imperfections would always make it a flawed actual implementation of that perfect theory. So could it ever happen? I don't know.
Which is the beauty of the checks and balances in our system.
Right. So if you look at the checks and balances that we have in government, we have some of the same, like economics looks at the same checks and balances when we look at our own, the way that, what motivates man to act in a certain way. Most of the time, in economics we say it's self-interest. And so how do you, there's some types of laws that are set up, tax laws or other types of laws that play off those self-interests of individuals.
Good. I like talking about this when it's off season. This is not the middle of a campaign, but there's still, it's good to talk about, it's good to back up, I think, and just look at these political questions from a higher level. And I love what you said about how, one man's not going to ruin the country. I know there are probably people out there who are anti-Trumpers who are very violently disagreeing with you right now, throwing things around their house, driving into trees and stuff.
Well, I want to know from a Californian's perspective how the secession movement is going out there. I think I saw efforts amongst Californians to secede. How's that going?
The state of Jefferson, which is a real thing, and something that there's a huge movement for. And when I say huge, I mean it's not enough to get the votes to make it happen, but it is a sizable number of people who are just so fed up with the way Sacramento is run that they want to see it. The funny thing about Jefferson is that more people want to get in than, pretty soon the state of Jefferson, the concept will probably be the entire half of the state with slivers of Nevada and Oregon and Idaho rolled in, because I think people in Colorado have said yes, we want to be in Jefferson too. And then there's some in Nevada, they're so close to the border, they're like, well, anything's better than Nevada. I'm joking about that. But then you move down. It's been kind of north of Sacramento, but it's kind of moved south. And there's people going down into like Yosemite, very conservative areas of the state that are all, kind of getting on this Jefferson, the Jefferson train.
Right.
Isn't that a band or something? Jefferson.
Airplane?
Wasn't there a band?
Jefferson
Jefferson Airplane.
Right?
Yeah.
What's Starship? Is there a Jefferson Starship? No.
Oh, Starship. Did they merge or something?
See, not my genre.
Jefferson
I don't know.
Airplane.
Not my genre of music.
Starship was became Roxette. Is that right?
Roxette.
Na, 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 na.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the first tapes I bought. First singles. I heard it in a Woolworths, like a department store, and I heard that. Na, 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 na. Na, 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 na. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I played it for my kids a few months ago.
Wow.
They weren't impressed. It's like, listen to that chorus. It's an amazing chorus.
They'll come around one day. They'll appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like how I appreciate my dad's Neil Diamond.
So, politics. I've had one politician on the show. He talked about water during the California drought. And now I have sitting here across from me a political candidate. You want to talk about your race at all?
Sure.
Is that off limits?
No, you can talk, yeah.
Fair game, it's public.
It's definitely public. I decided about 2 weeks ago to run for my township.
Oh, just 2 weeks ago.
I've thought about doing it for a while.
Uh-huh.
I served on different committees in town. We have an open space committee. I live in a town that's 43 square miles wide or 43 square miles. A lot of open space, preserved farmland. It's very. If you think about New Jersey, you would not imagine this place. It's really beautiful. So I've been on the open space committee. We have been involved with preserving different tracts of land in town. So what that does is it can actually reduces the amount of development that's possible. So yes, I've been involved for a little bit with that, and I've always had a desire to be on the other side. Instead of working on a campaign, I wanted to have my own and be the candidate.
Cool.
So the family was at the right stage in life. The kids were just old enough that I could do this, and decided to throw my name in the hat.
Wow.
Went out and I had to get 36 signatures on my petition.
Cool.
And got those turned in. Did it over the weekend. Walked 3 different neighborhoods, got my signatures.
Wow.
Called up some friends. They signed it, got it turned in.
Awesome.
I think I ended up with almost 50 signatures just to be sure.
Uh-huh.
And it was good. So I'm running against a first term incumbent. He's been there 3 years. It's causing a little bit of concern among some people in town, wondering why I'm running as an incumbent. And there's really no. I guess in our town we have a staggered election, so every year someone on the township committee is up for election or re-election. And so it doesn't matter which year you'd go, you'd be against someone that was an incumbent. So why not?
Why not?
Get your feet wet and try it out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So how can my many listeners pitch in their help, contribute?
Well, if these are the ones that are giving you two star ratings on your podcast, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I need their help.
They really don't like me. At least that one who I'll never forget you, lib LDS. But do you have a website, or will you? You probably won't need something like that.
For the primary, I probably will not have a website. The easiest, I'm thinking about a Facebook page.
And that's probably the way to go.
But as you know, the most dedicated primary voters are typically seniors, a little bit older. I'm not sure how many of them I'd reach using Facebook.
Yeah.
But I did get the question the other day. I went to my first pancake breakfast at the firehouse.
Woo!
And I was shaking hands and meeting some of the people.
Awesome.
And someone asked me, one of the younger men there was, well, do you have a Facebook page or a website? And I said, I'll get back to you, but I'm thinking about it.
Wow. So this fits so perfectly, talking to you today with the politics series, which will continue next week. So if I was to be completely fair, I'd probably call this Politics, Gender, Math, Part 2. But I'm going to stick to my guns here and call it the last show for shock value. And on that note, one last thing. So first off, before I get to the last thing, I want to encourage anyone listening to search out that Facebook page. So I hope you come up with that soon and like it.
Yes.
Because it's all about likes. Just like my Facebook page is all about likes. Facebook.com/Josh Podcast. I've reached 50 likes. I was at 50 likes.
That's a big payday for you.
And then someone unliked it.
Oh, no.
So it went down to 49. But I couldn't figure out who did it. So I need to track who likes my page so that whenever it goes down, then I know who did it, and I can just hold a personal grudge against them the rest of my life. I want to encourage people to like your page, like my page if you haven't already. That would be very kind. And also, I just wrapped up the Today series, and Tyler, you have been one of the loyalists on the Today series. You've liked a lot of my Today series posts. I had 100, and I have not gone back to count how many you've liked, so don't worry about that. If I ever get into a big, deep depression, dark stage of my life, I might do that, go back and see who loves me and stuff for reassurance, but for now I won't do that. So I only bring up the Today series because of the shock value of calling this the last show, and I also kind of did that with the Today series because I said, okay, a few weeks ago I said, I'm only going to do 100 of these. I think I was at number 80 or something. And I had one person say, don't stop. This is so great. And I was like, if 5 more people told me not to stop, I'd probably keep this going. No, I'm kidding. I was getting pretty, not burned out, but okay, this is getting old. It's got to end. So I finished it on Sunday. That was number 100. And then on Monday, I put out a new one. It was number 101 out of 100. And then today is Tuesday. I did the Today series outtakes.
Ooh.
And did you see that one yet?
I have not.
Okay, these are the ones that didn't make it to the final 100. These weren't worthy of that. But do you have...
I have to say, I actually really liked the Today series. I was sad when I saw it was ending, and quite happy and somewhat surprised to see it back on. Because I really did like it. What was the impetus behind the Today series again?
So it was last fall at some point. I came up with this expression, and it had the word today in it. And then I thought of another one that also used the word today, and I thought this might be a future blog post because I like to write, and I thought, here's an idea. Did you see it?
Today has the words to and day in it.
Uh-huh.
The outtakes, which means today.
So I'm going to keep doing these for about 2 weeks. I have about 2 weeks worth. They're just as bad as that one. And, it's after midnight, my gosh. But yeah, I started it out because I thought, it'll be a blog post, and then I came up with like 10 or 15 of them, and then I thought, this isn't going to be a good blog post because it's just like these short little sayings with the word today in it. So I thought, why don't I start this New Year's Day and just I'll call it the Today series, and then around Christmas time, so I was already planning on doing that, and Christmas time I had like this New Year's resolution type of thought that I start a Facebook page and I start doing these Today series memes, and then start like advertising with them, and so that I'd show up in other people's feeds that don't know who I am and might find the blog and podcast that way. So I've done 3 ads since then, using a few of the Today series posts. It's the worst idea for an ad because it shows up in their feed, and I'll get more likes because people see it, these random people in the world. I targeted some urban areas that all like the same comedians that I do, and so I thought, why don't I try that? And so I got some likes from that, but no likes of the page that I can tell, no extra traffic to my blog. But I did a blog post where I advertised that. But I'm glad I have a Facebook page now, because then I've always felt bad putting my podcast and memes and everything on my own Facebook page, because then I always get this feeling that friends of mine on Facebook are just sick of it. Like, what is Josh doing? No one else does this on Facebook, and here's this guy doing completely random stuff, and he's totally self-promoting himself and just not a cool person.
Well, I think you should feel good, because I think your first 100 days were better than Trump's first 100 days.
They were good, because I have accomplishments, right?
Pretty, yeah.
I have a series of memes. So can I tell you, or did you have something to say?
No, I think you had more success and less failures.
I am going to turn the Today series into a book, a coffee table book that you flip through. Have I told you this?
No.
Yeah, it'll be...
It's brilliant.
On the right side of the page will be the meme, the Instagram one, so the big square. And then on the left, you'll have my commentary about how I came up with that, what it means to me, the random comments I may have received, sort of the...
Like how many likes it got.
How many likes it got. This one only got 3 likes, and it'll be in an actual glossy paged book. I'm totally determined to do this.
I'd probably buy it.
So this is another advertising type idea where I'll put in my own money to print these, and I thought of doing some kind of, like if you like my page, you get a chance to win a free Today series coffee table. So,
you know what I love about this is that you're actually going all in on this Today series.
I am going all in,
and
it's the stupidest
and then some.
And it's the stupidest idea I've ever had. So, anyway.
But like I said, I'd probably buy it.
I would love
it sounds actually really interesting.
I would be honored if you bought it, and even if you put it away. But anyway, so thank you, friend, for appearing on the Josh Podcast show, on the last show of the Josh Podcast show. I will be back next week because the show is not ending. This is the last show because it's the title of the episode, but I will come back for part 2.5. This is kind of part 2 of the Politics, Gender, Math, where I'll close out what it means to wherever I was going last week. Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to say?
No, thanks for having me. I've always been a fan of the show, and it's an honor to finally be on it.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Cue the music.
I love that book idea.
Thank you for listening to the Josh Podcast Show, the anti-podcast podcast on God and man. For more information, visit joshpodcast.com. Follow Josh on Twitter at Josh Rolfe. That's Rolfe, R-O-L-P as in podcast, H. Now go and have the best day and night ever. And have fun.